Happy Wax on Wednesdays. I have been gone for a couple weeks here on a family trip, and I had some family visiting for out of town. My dad was actually here from California, and so a little break here in the Wax on Wednesdays videos. And I also like to take a couple weeks in the summer and sort of give myself a mid-year evaluation and evaluate what I've been doing for the year, my goals, am I meeting my goals, and sort of assess my plans for the rest of the year. And sometimes when you're in business for yourself, you have to sit back a little bit and evaluate yourself and assess your be your own boss and assess what if you're achieving everything that you need to be doing. So I usually take a couple weeks in the summer to reorganize and reassess everything, and that's what I've been doing along with a family trip to Florida that we take every year. So this is a few pieces that I did a couple weeks ago, so they're completely dry. I did them in cold wax, and this is actually cold wax and charcoal, and I just shaved some charcoal off of my charcoal pencils, and I had some big, wide, thick, fun ones, and just shaved it off and into the cold wax, mixed it up, and used this here. I love painting in black on the white paper. This is oil. This is the Arches oil paper again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and retape these down to my board. This is my board that I use, just the back of a paper pad, all the watercolor paper pads and different paper pads that I have. I always save the back because they make great boards to tape your warm-ups or your papers down to, and you can set them aside, easy storage, and I store them in my drawers or my shelves, and it doesn't take up any room. I can put them away and sort of set them aside, let them dry, and bring them back out when I want to add to them. So I'm going to go ahead and just tape these down again, and these were again just a quick warm-up and sort of just playing around with some mark making and movement in the cold wax and seeing how the graphite worked with it. And I also used some solid graphite crayons and charcoal crayons with it. And just worked on making some marks one morning when I was warming up in the studio. And these warm-ups are great because this type can be a twofer. You can keep going and use them again on another warm-up, which is what I'm gonna do. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use my same tape line marks and go ahead and tape them down again with some painter's tape. Little tip when you're using painter's tape, put it on your apron first so it doesn't rip any of your paper when you go to take it off. And when I come into the studio every morning, and if you've watched Wax on Wednesdays or taken any of my workshops, you'll know that I do warm-ups every morning when I come into the studio, and it loosens me up, and a lot of times I learn some really great new techniques, get some great new ideas just from warming up and not really worrying about what's going to happen. It's all exploration, it's all fun, and it's all discovery. And I like to play with different mediums. A lot of times I'll use mediums that I'm not that I don't use on a daily basis, or maybe some tools that I don't use on a daily basis. Maybe I'll grab something that I never thought of using for a tool. And a lot of times using a different medium that you're not used to using will give you ideas for your own, when you resume back to your own medium that you're really comfortable with. Just because you're not comfortable with it, it's not the norm, and you're sort of outside of your comfort zone, and a lot of time that provides for new ideas, because you're not sort of stuck thinking the same way and taking your your brain in the same direction. You have to open up to that new medium. And so in doing so, you also open up your mind to new ideas. And that is why I'm so excited about the new workshop, Moving the Paint and You. And it is 30 days of wonderful, fun, and exciting warm-ups in all sorts of different mediums to get you moving and thinking outside your comfort zone, thinking of things in a whole different way, and give you some new tools for your technique toolbox. And the whole way to do that is to just begin and start moving and not worry about what's going to happen. It's a warm-up. It's not scary. It's completely fun and inspiring. So in this new workshop is 30 straight days of a new warm-up every day, some inspirational quotes and ideas, and just really playing. And in using these techniques, I give you also ideas for using them throughout the week, how I use them in the studio. Sometimes I will theme them and go for a straight week, building upon each warm-up as I go. There's so many ways to incorporate these warm-ups in your daily routine and really getting you moving in the studio. And I'm really excited about sharing that with you, and that is coming up on September 10th. It begins, and you can still register right now on the website at any time at sherryreplogle.com. And so here I'm going to start on my second wave of these warm-ups, and I'm going to use just a couple of different fun mediums. They're going to be really quick. I've already sort of got the background going, and I can go a couple of ways here. Today I'm just going to add some straight color and see what happens when it goes over the graphite. I can also just keep building on these and keep layering in the cold wax, and that can be a lot of fun too, and use them as a third warm-up. But today I'm just going to add some color in a couple different ways and see what happens. So first I'm going to take just a spatula, and I've got some orange here, some orange oil paint and cold wax medium. I'm using Winsor Newton is the brand of oil paint, and just a 1-to-1 ratio of Dorland's cold wax medium. And so let's go over here on this one and just see what happens. And that's a little thick on that. Get the squeegee out. Got my catalyst blade. See if I can thin that out a little bit. And I can scrape it almost all the way back off, or apply it right back on. I could really thin this down quite a bit too, so more of the charcoal and cold wax would shine through. And if I wanted to do that, I could use some Galkid medium or some Gamsol. And really thin that out a little bit and get a lighter application. I could also put a higher ratio of cold wax to this pigment, and that also would go on as a more translucent layer. So there's a whole lot of ways to thin this out. Once you've made up this cold wax color. I love that brightness. And I'm just sort of working it into the paper as I go. And maybe I want to just leave that as the black and white and leave some areas and just add some areas of bright color. I think that's what I'm going to do on this one. Let's see. I'm going to take some watercolor. Now remember that this, even though it looks and feels just like watercolor paper, some really high-grade watercolor paper. It actually is Arches oil paper. So it's going to have a strong resist to this watercolor. It's not, the watercolor is not going to go on like it would onto a watercolor paper. So keep that in mind when you're using that Arches oil papers. You really have to work it in a little bit and try not to work it in so much that you damage the integrity of the paper, but some gouache might work even better on this paper. But it's just it's a different experience. So if you're used to working with watercolor, you know how it goes on. This is going to be a little bit of a different experience for you. It can be done. It's not an impossibility. So if you read, well, it can't be, watercolor can't be used on the Arches oil paper. It can, but you're going to have a much different result than you would. You're not going to be able to paint fluidly with the watercolor. And we're just, for this purpose, we're just adding color and highlights of color. We're not really interested in anything else. So it's going to work just fine. And you can see it really dug into the areas where the paper was still exposed, but where that cold wax is really on a solid layer of cold wax is embedded on this paper. It's really not going to go through, but it still has some lovely, really nice areas of blue, and that's what I'm looking for, is just some highlights, just some accents for these sort of already done warm-ups. And let's do that on a second one. And this is also Winsor Newton. This is a, let's see what I'm using here. This is a Cotman, a Winsor Newton Cotman, and the color is, this is a cobalt blue. And this has, where it's beating up really quite a bit, it has a layer of clear wax that's sort of sealed the paper. So we'll see how much blue will actually go on here. We might have to graduate to another cold wax layer on this one, because I seem to remember when I did it that I put cold wax in this area, clear cold wax with no pigment in this area, and that's why it's not going through at all, as the paper's been sealed. Try it on another one. There. See how much easier this one's going on than this over here. And it's still not fluid like a watercolor paper, but it's going on quite a bit better into the paper than this over here is beaded up. And this is because I put that clear cold wax layer that went ahead and sealed that paper off. So I can wipe that with a paper towel and it would probably come most of the way off. And I didn't remember until I started adding the blue paint that I had actually done that. So here I'm just sort of finding the areas that the blue will embed itself on the paper, and that's really kind of fun to see. I'm going to take an R&F yellow, take a little bit of that yellow from R&F stick, and I just chopped some off, and we'll add some cold wax to it, mix it in, get it nice and soft. And let's add, I'm going to add quite a bit of cold wax there and make it a little more of a translucent layer. I'm adding quite a bit of cold wax to this. It's more than a 1-to-1 ratio. And just going to make it slightly more translucent, since I want the charcoal to really shine through. And you can see how translucent that is now that I've added more than a 1-to-1 ratio of cold wax to that yellow. It's completely a translucent layer. And I'll just add it to the whole without worrying about it. I can press a little harder and scrape it almost all the way back so it just has sort of a yellow tint to it. And I can also take some of that good cold wax and add a thicker layer in just certain areas. And of course I can build on these and add more colors, more layers. I can set this aside and let it dry and come back and do yet another warm up and add another layer to these and just keep building. It's just a really fun to explore and explore your medium with warm-ups every morning, and you'll be really surprised as how far you can go and how much you discover in as little as a 5 or 10 minute warm-up each morning. So I can continue to build on these and come back, let them dry and come back another time, add yet another layer of cold wax and keep building and use these for another warm-up. Or I can call them done. And that's the great thing about warm-ups is you're just playing, you're discovering, you're a journey through your techniques, and you'll be surprised at how far you can get with just a simple 5 to 10 minute warm-up every morning when you come into the studio, especially if you're learning a new medium. Maybe you're traditionally an acrylic painter, traditionally an acrylic painter, traditionally an oil paper, you're exploring cold wax, you're exploring encaustic, or you're an encaustic painter and you're exploring cold wax, or vice versa, and you really want to get a feel for that medium before you begin a large painting or before you dive in. And a 5 to 10 minute warm-up every morning, sort of working in a new medium to you, or a medium that you're not completely comfortable or familiar with, you'll be really surprised at how far you can get in that 5 to 10 minutes every morning after a month's time, and how far you can evolve and come and discover your own style and techniques, and being just comfortable with that medium. So I hope you really enjoyed this Wax on Wednesdays and this little technique video, and hope you will join me for the Moving the Paint and You workshop coming up on September 10th. You can look on the website for further information, and happy Wax on Wednesdays and happy creating, guys. Bye-bye.